Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Jesus said to the 12, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to the one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Don't be deceived in thinking, because this is a short passage, that there's nothing here, because there's a tremendous amount of information here. In particular, it's assignment for this particular day's text, leading us into what we in the United States of America celebrate as the 4th of July, a Declaration of Independence. Even a cup of cold water. "Oh, for a cup of water from the well from the city of Bethlehem," David said when he was outside the city limits and troubled, and all of the women back in the city, the children back in the city, conquered by the enemy, stuck in the hillside. And it was a simple whispered wish that led the leaders, the generals, if you will, back to gather that bucket of water. Oh, for a cup of water. For me, it was simply, I could go for a cherry pie. And a week and a half ago, a cherry pie showed up a day later. Thank you. A whispered wish. If I could just catch my breath, a whispered wish. Can I just catch a break? A whispered wish. If my spouse would only understand, a whispered wish. What's wrong with my child? How can I help? A whispered wish. 50% of some denominations prepare and train individuals for ministry. And within the first 5 years, they leave ministry because it wasn't what they anticipated. Distractions. The last 15 minutes, all over the place, even here, even now. Sounds to draw us away. Sounds that I hope someone figures out where they're coming from. And if they can't hear, help them hear. Do unto others. We are the United States of America. We are a great society. What we do for others, we will see again in our own lives. Today's the day to remember. Not the illusory dream of a democracy, but as people of faith, recognizing those things in our lives and our history that make a difference when we remember. Yes, it does apply to those of us who are followers of Christ. For those of us who are in the service of the Lord, Lauren and Maddie last week, watching them on cell phone and computer screen while I was grading my last class, they were spectacular. That's a team. That's not a pastor of a congregation. It's a leader with a team. You have to get the right people in the seats of the bus if you're going to go in the right direction. And sometimes that takes time to find the right people. And not everyone that's sat at the driver's seat can always stay at the driver's seat. Sometimes you have to swap it out because they're better at certain terrain. That's the call of the gospel, to always be changing. A God that's always moving. God's the same always and always shall be. No, that's the church as it was in the beginning, is now, and always shall be. The gospel calls for change. But the scriptures do say, do not touch my anointed ones, do my prophets no harm. And what did we do to the prophets? What did we do to those voices that were saying the things that we didn't like to hear? Until the advent of the television and the clicker, we didn't know what to do with it, did we? Or did we? Did we just use the clicker in our brain and we tuned them out? Do not be deceived in Galatians. God is not mocked, for you reap whatever you sow. And Jesus, in Matthew 10, if anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. It was hardly possible to shake off the sand of the beach when we left. And I swear we brought half of Ocean City back with us. Just look at the back seat of my car. Gene. The reward, whoever welcomes a prophet, is entry into the kingdom of God at the end of the age, but that's really not the reward. That's what we think is the reward. The reward is knowing and recognizing that we are the stranger in the midst of people. We are the ones who are the actual guest. Jesus is the host. I stand at the door of your heart and knock, and if you enter, Jesus is the host, not us. America's a work in progress. This congregation was started when the President of the United States was Thomas Jefferson. So I must believe that on the minds of the people that started this congregation, they had to have some of the writings of President Jefferson in mind. Not a perfect life by any means, but perfect words. And if you read and study Thomas Jefferson, you'll understand that all men created equal. He was not saying males. Look at his education. It wasn't just males. It was all people created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This congregation has an obligation not only to our baptismal vow, but the mission statement that was begun when this congregation began over 200 years ago. And it must be understood in context, for Jefferson was saying in a Declaration of Independence that while we want to be independent, these colonies, we must be dependent on each other, for divided we will fall. Unity is tough. It's not easy. Democracy demands something more than sitting on our keisters. Democracy demands that we understand there are two sides of a coin, or are there three? Front, back, and what about that thin rim that everybody misses? There are 6 sides to every door when you paint them. Not just the inside and the outside, or the outside and the inside, but all 4 edges. For us to be who we are, see what we have, and do what matters, we must see the significance of the biblical mandate that comes from the Sermon on the Mount. So Emily, I want you to do something, because we can kick you out. We can't kick others out, right? But I want you to come on up here, and I want you to see something. By the way, thank you. And thank you for playing and accompanying the way you're accompanying. It's beautiful when I can hear the voice and not the instrument of the piano. It's beautiful when someone actually knows how to accompany music. Right? We brought a worship leader in Emily. We're training and equipping, not just the voice, that's her job. We're offering an opportunity here at St. John's to equip saints for works of service so that the body of Christ is built up. And tell me this body isn't built up when we have a voice up front that draws us out, calls us, and invites us to be at our absolute best. Isn't that what we're looking for here? Thank you. So this is, I have coffee breath, pardon me. You can tell the truth. So this is from Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And on the 4th chapter, we begin with the temptation of Jesus. He was struggling because somebody had made him a box of chocolate, and he was thinking about eating all of it. But, well, that's not really what the temptation of Jesus is. That's my temptation. But he begins ministry in Galilee, and he gets to this thing called the Beatitudes. Would you mind reading from the pulpit the Beatitudes?
When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak, and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who will be persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Do you believe these words? Then to quarrel with those who are zealous in the pursuit of social justice makes about as much sense as making war against people who are zealous about principles embodied in the Sermon on the Mount. So I need you to do something. I need you to rip that page out. No. Nor can anyone who is trying to take this nation and tear it apart around social justice. Because it would mean that we, the people of God, must tear out the Sermon on the Mount, for those are Jesus' words. Jesus said, this matters. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. We, the people. A Declaration of Independence, or is it for those of us, we the people who call ourselves children of God, total dependence on God? It is consistent. Thank you, Emily. It is consistent with and compelled by our mission statement here at this congregation and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. It is a form of a baptismal vow, a promise that we have received something that we do not deserve. Independence, freedom of choice, liberty, all are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The history of these United States of America is never ending. It's a never-ending struggle for social justice. In 1954, when the Supreme Court of the United States entered into their books a decision, in 1954, that white people were to open institutions to black citizens. Can you imagine, only 75 years ago, we were in the midst of that struggle here in the United States of America, the most supposed progressive nation on the earth. Separate but equal. Would anyone here deny that's a moral fiction? To create a truly equal society means institutional hospitality as well as hospitality here at St. John's. This week, the Supreme Court of the United States reversed a decision, a direction. I believe they took their weight off the legal scales of inclusion. I believe it's for us, the Christian church, the community of believers, the community of faith, to never stop fighting for all people are equal, or you must tear out the pages, if you're going to be honest. I believe there's something significant going on in our world. I believe it's important that we're a part of it. And I am proud to be a part of a congregation that began under Thomas Jefferson's presidency and continues to seek to do exactly as Jefferson expressed, to ensure, to strive for, and to always understand that we, the people, there is no way to separate politics and church. There is no way to do that except to stick your head in the sand. For it is fighting for justice, equality, and equity for all peoples. This saith the white man with the whitest hair in the room. It's been in recent years that I've understood what it means to have privilege. I've always respected walking into a pulpit. I've never taken it for granted. And for those of you that know me, know that hours and days are spent making sure that my heart, to the best of my human ability, is in a place to come here, but never as a person, because I believe I'm the least likely person to put behind a microphone in a pulpit. I come because I believe God says speak. I speak because I believe God says I will say something through you, and that you, Bob, are invisible. Just show them Jesus. Show them a Jesus that did the opposite of what society thought. Show them a Jesus who would accept and receive all people. Show them you who were born in central Pennsylvania and learned how to be a racist, learned how to be a bigot, learned how to do all these things because of my upbringing, and learned here in Boyertown, Pennsylvania, how to be called something I've never been called before in my life, a liberal. If loving is defined as liberal, then I want to be the most loving, liberal person on the planet. People of God at St. John's, we live in this world, compelled by a baptismal promise that we are to live among God's faithful people, that we are to strive for justice. That is in our baptismal vows here at St. John's. It's in your bulletin. It's printed there every week along with our purpose. And it is clear and it is undeniable. The history of America, our history, will be struggle. And it should be. If we are worth our salt, it should be. Freedom. You get to decide. I've been thinking about it. Supreme Court justices are appointed. Life sentences. I never worry about how long a president is going to be in office. We're stuck with them for 4 or 8 years, no matter who they are, no matter how much we like them, no matter how much we dislike them. But a Supreme Court justice, we get them for life. If their core politics doesn't clearly, productively, and powerfully advance the mission statement of the Declaration of Independence, they have no business being in or running for office. That's a personal statement, but I also believe it's supported by the words of Jesus. Jesus who took on the authorities, Jesus who took on the voices, Jesus who saw people in positions of power and authority come to him and serve him. Totally devoted disciples. But they looked in a mirror and said they were heading in a wrong direction. You are heading in such a beautiful direction here at St. John's. That's what came to me. That's why my Kindle didn't work. That's why the sun barely came out. That's why I got to ride my bike all but one day the whole time I was down at the beach. That's why my bike looks a mess. That's why I came back a mess. That's why my heart just loves being here today. Because when I look at what you have done and where you are going, I only want to hang on, because many of you are so far ahead of me already. You're already thinking, Amanda East, about how to join Berks Arts with this place and have us sit at a table and have discussions about how the arts could be lifted up and this be that place. 8 years ago, I longed for her to be, and I think it will be that, whether I'm here or not. Madison, the work that you did at VBS, I don't think I know anyone that's faster paced than I am, and now I do. You are an odd duck. You had a good teammate. That Lauren was just a kid working with Molly Byrne, Molly Culp, 8 years ago, and now the two of you as a team. What a dynamic duo. I feel so blessed. You allow me to speak a truth that many congregations would tar and feather me. You allow me to speak the Bible. I'm not sure you'd be able to stop me, but it sure makes it nice when you allow me to speak truth. Prayer. The things that we are up against right now in our society, I believe they can only be addressed and dealt with through prayer. I believe that young one that said, not to me, but to their parent passed it on. What is the purpose of life? I can't imagine someone their age saying, what is the purpose of life? Because I don't oftentimes have adults say, what's the purpose of life? They wander aimlessly through their lives. I see that, I hear that when I get to their funeral. I ask their families, what was most important to them? Richard Idle, to work hard and never complain about the illness that he received because he worked in dirty conditions, a foundry. I know that intimately because I spent time in a foundry, because that's what my dad did. But to know that the man's response was to put food on the table and to make sure that all of my children are created and treated equally, that's a man of God. Bob Eshelman, Grace Beeler. Grace Beeler was more supportive and an evangelist of this congregation. And when's the last time we saw Grace sitting in these pews? Don't think for a second only those seated in the pews are committed to the mission of this congregation. And don't think for a second that it's not supported at broad levels, especially now. You are bold, you are mighty, and you are a congregation established as we the people to love God and to love all people equally. That's powerful. There's more that I want to say, but truthfully, it's not my words any longer that I need to hear. I need to hear yours. I need to hear which one of you is going to run for public office. I need to know which one of you is going to do what we can to make sure that the Boyertown School District is supported and nurtured and encouraged. Because in nurturing and encouraging, they will be bolder to be who we want them to be. It doesn't happen by criticizing. It happens by wrapping our heads around it and supporting people, loving them into their future, into our future. I want to make sure that we don't lose, like every single community around us has lost their ambulance. I want to make sure that we have the treatment and the care. When I went to the hospital a number of months ago, I was on the road, I met Jim Boyer at the ambulance. Becky drove from here down there wondering what was next, probably trying to figure out what on his task list does he have to have done before he dies. But it wasn't on the calendar. And I saw people go into action, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the people that we have supporting us. And I want to see people in this community sign on the dotted line and take the oath and serve in the United States Armed Forces. I want to see that. If they'd take me now, serving others. Jesus served up to the point of his death. But you might say, yeah, but he was only dead for 3 days. Well, that's true. But when he died, he took on the sin of all humanity so that forgiveness would be the paramount word, that forgiveness would reveal how Jesus taught those, including Peter. Did you notice how Jesus, when Peter had screwed up, had messed up, afterward when they were out fishing and Peter recognizes and makes it to the shore and then probably says, oh crap, this is probably not the thing I should have done. I should have probably hidden my face from Jesus after denying him 3 times. But he couldn't. Did you notice Peter wasn't the one pursuing Jesus, but Jesus found them fishing. Jesus pursued the one who had denied him. Jesus was the one that went after the one that had messed up. Jesus, God, pursues us constantly. And the reminder was already on Peter's heart because Peter already had an authentic heart and recognized where he had messed up. For those who don't have that, I suspect Jesus would have had some reminders. But once we know we've messed up, just like with our own children, if we're good parents, what do? They know it. It's over. Now what do? We build forward. I thank God for the members of St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church who have refurbished not a facility, but people, for the sake of the gospel, where all people are equal.